What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Movement Mindset powered by Station Athletics. I'm Chris Hardenberg, and today we're here with Tania Bentley. Tania is a member at our women's gym. And I mentioned this to Tania off air, but I kind of reached out to our staff because I wanted to get more of our members on to tell their stories, especially because I think it could pertain to whether it's a member inside of one of our gyms listening to be able to relate to you guys, or someone outside of our gyms. It's funny. I actually had a woman who signed up at Ledgewood the other day who came in because she saw Jane Fahrenfeld's testimonial. She was like, I saw the woman who, was in her 60s or 70s. She was able to do it, recovered from something. She's like, I got to do this. So that's why I wanted you guys on. And I said to you, the first two people who got back to me, pretty much separately, but kind of together, were Raph and Shannon, and they both said you.
Oh. Well, they're amazing people in their own right and so inspirational. So thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So let's just get started.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about Tania. What do you do? Your background, your family, the whole nine.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the shortened version.
Okay.
I don't have that much time. I was born and raised in South Africa.
Okay.
So I've lived in the United States for 20 years now. I came over, completed a degree in broadcasting and journalism, went on to work for several news outlets as a reporter, finally landed as a senior producer for a news and public affairs program. Was very successful in that, early 20s, borderline 30s, running shoots in New York City, covering stories that really matter and that really drive impact and change. And was very successful at doing so. I mean, I say it with all humility and modesty, but we were able to be awarded several Emmy Awards.
Dang,
As a
Tania.
result, I have seven.
Come on, yeah. She's like, do I say it?
No. I mean, I say it from the standpoint of when you're really passionate about what you do and your work is recognized and it's telling people stories and impacting change and the stories that truly matter. So everything that I covered as relates to just everyday people sharing what they're struggling with and driving policy changes within the New Jersey legislature. Everything from solitary confinement in juveniles, or wrongful conviction, wrongful imprisonment of several individuals I was fortunate enough to meet, and then seeing the laws being changed as a result. So just a very, just big passion of mine as it results to both media and then just doing something with purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So you did that.
I did that.
What do you now what?
Oh, well.
So what's happened since then?
So the story pivots. So again, I was 30 and, in New York City with my crews, covering all sorts of press conferences and, going to the prisons, hearing people's stories. And then it was January of 2017, I woke up with this really strange feeling in my left side of my body. I was also extremely active at the time. I was a runner in South Africa, did cross country, and in the States had found a really good gym that I loved, was doing kickboxing, was doing all sorts of craziness and really pushing my body, running. And so I thought for sure when I woke up that morning, this is just a pinched nerve. There's no big deal. Everything is fine. And then that just turned into an increasing burning, numbness sensation. And then very suddenly, it was almost night and day. I walked into the emergency room at St. Barnabas and 2 days later couldn't stand.
Oh my gosh.
And couldn't walk. And so the nurses were carrying me back and forth to the bathroom, did a series of imaging, of my brain and spinal cord. They revealed several lesions and was sat down by a doctor who said, all right, well, you have MS. And it was just the biggest shell-shocking experience because, again, I went from running, doing all of these things with my body, really pushing it to the limit, but being a really healthy, young individual, at the peak of my career, again, having all the success, to being completely debilitated and dependent on everyone around me. So it was, it was a shock to say the least.
So around that time, so we kind of dove right into it.
We did.
I had some other questions, but we went right there. So it's like, hey guys, we're just going to go right there.
You asked for the story,
I know,
so that's the story.
Well, let me back up then before I get to the meat of it. Because I always wonder this for people who come from another country. What made you be like, you know what? Yeah, I'll just go to the United States. What made you do that?
So I actually came over as an au pair in 2005, and I was in the middle of my studies in the University of Johannesburg, again, pursuing journalism, a degree, and I thought, let me just, do a quick kind of, year abroad, and I am very passionate about children, love working with children, did a lot of tutoring and mentorship programs in South Africa. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to just go somewhere and be placed. And so I applied through an agency and could have been placed anywhere within the States. I was just like open book, put me wherever.
Okay.
Had a family contact me from Montclair to say, we really like you, come spend the year with us. I came, fell in love with the kids, met my then boyfriend, now husband. This kind of became plan A very quickly. Transferred my credits over, went to Montclair State. But it was, I loved the experience of being able to travel, being able to experience. It wasn't so much of a culture shift because South Africa is very similar in what we draw upon. All the television shows are the same, the movies are the same, cultural influences are all the same. But it was, it was pretty cool. And pretty quickly it became, what I told my friends at the time would just be a year turned into 20. And so here we are 20 years later with a family and, this is home. And my husband is from the UK. So our families are oceans and oceans apart.
Yeah. So you're a very eclectic background.
Yes. He came over as a work study to be a coach. And that's what he does professionally now with U.S. youth soccer. And as I said, this just became home and plan A. And so when we got married, the joke that they made, there were people from 13 different countries attending our wedding because our families and friends are spread all over the world. So it's great that I'm able to give my children that experience now too. I have 2 of them, a 3 and a 5-year-old, and so it's awesome to get to share that like worldly, background with them.
Yeah.
So like they get to visit our families, but they also get to just learn about different cultures, different places in the world, and different mindsets, right? Like different experiences, different ways of living, all of that good stuff.
So this might be presumptuous, but from what you're saying, you strike me as someone who type A go-getter, but loves an adventure.
How did you get that so quickly?
But like,
yes,
because the type of person who just up and says, I'm just going to do a year abroad, just see what happens. And then it didn't sound like you had maybe a slight plan, but not like but then to hear your career, it's like, no, I'm going all in and we're trying to make as many adventures as possible.
Yeah, I was 18 at the time, and I just remember this, and I worked full time to study, and I graduated debt free, and I really was going to just put my all into it one way or the other. And this is, it's been quite the adventure. I didn't know what life had in store for me, but it was just wonderful to get to be placed in Montclair, which is so close to the #1 news market in the entire world. I mean, I think that was just the aligning of, good luck and good fortune to be placed there. Because again, I would have, if someone had called me from Austin, Texas, I would have gone anywhere in the U.S., Alaska, you name it. But it just so happened the first host family to call me was in Montclair. And so they loved me. They wanted me to stay. And I said, well, I'll stay, but I need to continue to pursue my degree.
Right.
And so did that. And then here we are.
So let's fast forward.
Yeah.
You're diagnosed with MS. What goes through your mind at that point? How did things progress from there? I know you mentioned like the nurses needed to help you out of bed. Like you don't need that help right now, it looks like. So what happened immediately after? I still, because of my personality and the type of just like that go-getter attitude of like just I can conquer anything that comes my way. I'm able to rise above and be resilient. I truly just thought, okay, this is a short-term stay in the hospital. They're going to give me a course of steroids. Everything would be fine. And it was downplayed to me a lot. I got handed a pamphlet, and they were like, this is a pamphlet on MS. And it was kind of like, but you'll be okay. And so here's my husband and I at the time, again, just 30 years old, had never been hospitalized, had never been sick, had never even really gone to the doctor much as a child in South Africa. It was just like, you just didn't go unless you had broken a bone. And that turned into a 4-month hospital stay. Oh my gosh. So it was transfer from hospital to hospital to hospital to try to figure out what was going on with me. And so that's when your mindset starts to really like, you realize the weight and the gravity of the situation you've been dealt with, and that this is going to be pretty long term. And so post the 4-month hospitalization stay, what we didn't know at the time turned into 3 years of being wheelchair bound. What?
So it was all the way up until the pandemic, and really the year after the pandemic and prior to us moving to Sparta, that I was fully wheelchair bound, and I thought this was going to be my life and my reality going forward. And I had mentioned to you before we started recording that, I'm a big advocate for people, who struggle with any kind of debilitating illness, but MS, you name it, but particularly when it comes to not being ambulatory and having access to, accessible places within the world, because it was so much a part of my reality and my husband's reality, being in this situation, neither one of us have family around. We're both of us are trying to just survive and figure out what is happening, but also adjust to it and, just try to live life as normally as possible.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I always say, which brought me to where I am now in my journey, is you've been handed this chronic illness and 3 years of being in a wheelchair, and you can either succumb to the weight of that, which you are certainly entitled to do, or you can realize, well, that's the only life I've been given, so let's try to make it a good story. And so even when I was inpatient, I was at Kessler in West Orange for 3 months of my hospitalization. I would do my PT, and I would just get, everyone, we would have the same floor as the stroke patients, and, it would be patients all around me, and I would be like, you're such an inspiration. And I would be like, are you kidding? I'm debilitating pain. I couldn't even straighten up. I was stuck in a fetal position. There were so many issues with what was happening with my body, and I just... at that moment was all right, this is it. I kind of have to pivot and shift, and this is going to be my life. And so in a shortened version of what happened, thankfully I was able to have my 2 children after that, and that in addition to the disease-modifying therapies that I'm on, the excellent care of the neurologist and the team, the PT team. I was an inpatient and then outpatient PT for that solid 3 years, was able to, as in the height of the pandemic and lockdown, was able to very, very slowly, first with the use of a walker, then a rollator, then 2 crutches, then 1 cane, start to build that strength back up in my legs. And it was all, the work of that therapy and in addition to the therapy that I was on, the medication, the pregnancies, which helped take steps for the first time.
So much of that is so crazy to me, and I'm going to try to...
I try to give you the shortened version, too.
No, I love this. And I'm going to try to unpack everything. I'm going to be honest, not super knowledgeable on MS.
Yep.
Is a 4-month stay, is that common for people?
No, it's a complete anomaly. So the thing about MS and other autoimmune diseases is that they're just incredibly unpredictable.
Sure.
There is no rule book.
Sure, everyone's a little bit different.
Completely atypical. But they did look at this 30-year-old kind of going into Kessler, why is she suddenly in a wheelchair?
Yeah.
So it runs the gamut from all sorts of symptoms. And I still suffer those symptoms to this day. It's something that's chronic, right? And it's lifelong. But again, I've been given that incredible gift of hindsight of being able to regain some strength. And again, it's a combination of the excellent care of my neurology team, of the therapists that work with me, both inpatient, outpatient, the trainers that I had when I came out of, all the people that would come to my house and work with me. And again, just community, friends who became family, right? All of these people who pitched in and literally carried me when I wasn't able to walk. The amount of friends I have that would deal with that darn wheelchair that's in my attic right now collecting dust.
Heck yeah, it is.
But it's a combination of all of that. So I don't want to downplay that, and everyone has their own journey. But because of its unpredictability, that's why I was so unprepared for what it was going to be and what it ended up being.
Yeah. And so now you're in the wheelchair for 3 years, and it sounds like, and you could correct me if I heard you wrong, things started to take a turn for you physically in a good way around COVID.
Yeah.
Was that scary for you though? Because I don't know. I remember COVID very vividly, being that my entire livelihood was shut down.
Yeah.
But, everything you read about or heard online was if you're these populations, don't go anywhere. And you were one of those populations.
100%.
So it's in the midst of all that, you're making physical improvements. Yeah. How did you balance I'm making improvements, I don't want to stop, versus we really didn't know what was going on with all that? How did you balance all that?
I'm still one of those populations. My husband is so just incredibly, he's been a lifeline since day one. But
what's your husband's name?
Richard.
Richard, shout out to you, man.
No, seriously, when I tell you someone who went like above and there are no words to quantify. And seeing what he experienced versus what I lived through, I think as the person enduring it, it's one thing. As the person's sole caregiver who had no other family support, and friends that dropped everything and came from across the world. Like my best friend came in from Europe to just sit with him and make sure he was eating and sit with me by my bedside table. But the point that I wanted to make is that in the midst of COVID, this terrifying pandemic, and he was so incredibly protective of me, and he was like, and we had just had a baby too. He was 3 months old at the time. So it was like, you're not going anywhere. You're staying here. It was like, kept me in this bubble of, we were living in a fully accessible apartment building at the time. We moved so that I would be able to have a little bit of independence with my wheelchair, could get in and out. Prior to that, I was in a 2-story walk-up, couldn't even get outside, couldn't, get fresh air without someone coming, taking the wheelchair down the stairs, and then I would bump down, and it was this whole long process. But all of my therapy sessions were Zooms. So that same team that was committed to me, he would connect up the laptop, and they would be like, all right, show me what you're working on now. These are the exercises I'm going to give you. And so I would set up my laptop and then be on the floor and then be, continuing to stretch, continuing to work. But it was terrifying from an autoimmune standpoint, because I knew that if I was exposed to this, I would be part of that casualty list, And so even to this day, we're extremely careful when it comes to the flu, when it comes to colds, when it comes to anything that, I could potentially be compromised with. But that was, it was quite the experience. And the interesting comparison of this global pandemic that hit everyone so hard, and then yet here I was doing the best that I had ever done physically. And so a lot of friends, because no one was able to see each other, as was the case for everyone around the world, when they saw me for the first time and I stood up and took a few steps, they were just all like in tears, because it was for years, it was just a part of, well, that's just, that's Tania. And I accepted it as, okay, I'm going to make my best dang life out of this in this chair. And then even as I was pregnant with my firstborn, my therapist would say, you're going to be this kid's hero regardless, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're in a cane, if you're crutches. And so it was, let's work on the floor with the baby. Let's work on pulling the blanket with the baby on it. Let's work on this. Let's work on this. And so this reality now of living in Sparta, New Jersey, in a 3-story house, when before we would look at ranches, fully accessible ramps, all sorts of things that you'd have to do to a house, not just with one healthy child, but 2, and carrying them on my hip, like walking up and down the stairs, being here at Station Athletics for her, being able to, I had a workup with my neurologist just recently, and he goes, tell me about how you're doing physically. And I was like, well, I just did 100 box jumps in one of my classes on a 20-inch box. And he's like, wait a minute. Because that apartment, that walk-up apartment I told you about, there was a lip going from the hallway to the bathroom, and it was like maybe a 1/2 inch, like marble kind of slat. Yep. I could not lift my foot to go over that. They had to come in and actually, we had to call them, and they had to come and rip it out, because I wasn't able to lift my foot just that much. And so it's wild. And so for people like you, but even people in this town, because we're still somewhat new here, that meet me, and if I just kind of happen to mention it in, and I do, but from a positive standpoint, they're like, there's no way. You're lying. That's not true. That couldn't be possible. But I have all the equipment at home, and I have that experience. And the perspective that you gain, both physically, mentally, emotionally, is life-changing forever.
How emotional were those first interactions when you see your friends or family you haven't seen forever, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're a changed person.
They're sobbing. I'm sobbing. The biggest moment for me was when I was telling my therapist, because I had my son, and of course it was about protecting him, protecting myself. And I said, I'm going to hold this baby's hands when he's taking his first steps, and I'm going to walk alongside him doing that.
That's so
And they would say to me, it's okay if you don't. And I would be like, I know it's okay if I don't, but this is what I'm walking towards. And I would manifest it. I would envision it. I would see myself standing. And so I have video of me walking with him for the first time. I get emotional now just talking about it, because that moment to me was like, everything, everything. And so both of my children know about it. They're very much aware of what mommy experienced, what she went through, what she continues to live through. We do the walk every year. So we're very, I advocate for the MS Society. And for anybody who's listening and, as you say, gets inspired to come and join a place like this to work out, to fulfill whatever their personal goals, strength goals are, fitness goals, life goals are, that's the reason I talk about it, because I wish someone had sat with me at St. Barnabas before that 4-month and then 3-year debilitation to say, this might suck, and it might suck for a really long time, but there is another side to it.
Yeah.
And no one knows what that's going to be, but you will be able to be okay again. You will be able to live a life that is fulfilling and joyful again. So I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled to be able to do this stuff. And even people who knew me from before, I have so many close friends who would take videos of me practicing. There was a track, we lived in Cedar Grove, and there was just an athletics track. And that would be my practicing ground. I'd go with my crutches and my husband would follow me in the wheelchair. It would take me 45 minutes to do one lap. People who would do those workouts with me, I sometimes would post, what I do here in a day. And they'd be like, come on, what you're doing? And it's such a pinch me moment in the best way, because of that hindsight and gratitude that you get on this side of it.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, just speaking to someone who, whether they're going through MS or some sort of illness or something that's putting them in a position they're not used to being in. That's why I wanted to have some of you guys on, is because, it's easy for me to sit into a consultation with someone I've never met before and be like, hey, listen, you can participate in our classes. I know it doesn't feel like it or look like it, but we can modify anything so that you can participate. And I could imagine people being like, yeah, but really, you know what I mean? And so it's to have someone who's like, no, I've walked through this. I've gone through this, and I'm able to do these classes. And you mentioned doing 100 box jumps to a 20-inch box. I would imagine you didn't come in day one doing that.
No, absolutely not.
And so it's for that progress, I think it means more coming from someone who's been through it.
Yeah.
So you're living in Sparta now, and like you mentioned, you got a house with stairs, and it's you have all this positive momentum going on, but then you walk in here.
Yeah.
What brought you into here?
I was looking for some place to just continue. As I said, I was very active before, right? So I was doing things like this prior, but it had been a solid 7-8 years since I'd done anything this physical. And I remember having a really heart-to-heart conversation with Shannon about everything that you just said, to say listen, I'm newly walking. I don't know that, and my mindset, as you have probably come to realize, is very much I will. Yeah. And so my therapists were actually pulling me back. Okay, at Kessler, I'd be like, well, let's walk. Why aren't we walking? They'd be like, well, let's work on some other stuff. And be like, no, they would be like, okay, you really got to push the brakes on this. And so I was looking for a place that I could, continue this journey of strength, right? For me, it's first and foremost, rebuilding my strength in what I had before, but also finding a community that is supportive of that and also understands it. And so for my first conversation with her, I knew that this would be it. Yeah. And even though you see those numbers on that board and, the competitive nature inside you goes, oh, but there are women in here who are so much stronger or so much so. And I have days, trust me, yes, I did 100, 20-inch box jumps, but there are days I come in here and the fatigue is so debilitating, or am I experiencing another symptom that day where I'm not able to do that. Yeah. I'm able to do way less than that, but I'm always thinking about, all right, well, look at all these women around you, find inspiration, and it's nothing but support, and I love it. I love it. It's always they encourage you. I'll never forget one of the first workouts I did here. I was the very, very last person. There was a cap. I was like, I'm not making this thing. The cap had been and gone, and a bunch of women they had finished, minutes ahead of me, 6-7 minutes, and they jumped in and just started doing the reps with me.
That's cool.
So I could finish it, so that I could feel that's not something that you find often.
No, and I think that's super cool. And that's something I've said about specifically this gym, but all our gyms in general is I'll say this, each gym has a unique community. Yeah. They're not the same. And so there's kind of what I've noticed hallmarks that are cool about each one. And that's definitely one about this gym specifically is it's like it's like the Marines. It's like no man left behind, no woman left behind. And so it's like, even in the effect of like, I mean, I use this example all the time, but like I'm sure you've seen it, the number of moms who bring their kids to the babysitting, and then you have older women or women whose kids are older who will jump in and help
100%
help with the kids if there's a lot, because Mom, you get an hour.
You're
like,
trying.
Like just get in what you can, and I'll watch your kids for a half hour, right? So yeah, I think that's really cool that they created that environment for you. But like you said, my understanding of MS, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, is every day can be a different adventure.
Completely.
And so it's like, what keeps you coming back? Like, what prevents you from being like, you know what, screw it. Like, this hurts. This doesn't feel good. Like, what keeps you coming back?
Well, for me, it's also, I've come to understand like what my body is telling me. When I first moved to Sparta and I was newly walking, and this beautiful community with lakes and, trees, and you can like just all the scenery around you. And I was a runner before, as I mentioned. So I'm like, dang it, I'm going to do this. And I started running up and down these hills. And when I tell you, almost immediately, my body gave me a hard no. And so like my knees locked up, like I couldn't walk again. I was using my cane again. I went to see my neurologist, and he was like, you got to walk before you run. Like you cannot, like it's really understanding. And that's just like the physical side of it. Then you have like all of the neurological symptoms, the fatigue, as I mentioned, where you could sleep for 12 hours solid and still wake up completely drained, almost like you're walking underwater with weights. And like everything that you try to do, you're just not able to do. So I've learned, again, through that 4-month hospitalization, that 3-year debilitating, because I was doing those online Zoom therapy sessions, and there were days where I just like couldn't.
Yeah.
And so it's similar to this. There are days where I wake up and my body's like, listen, you have to take time to, and what I've come to understand is that like those days are just as important as the days that you show up.
Yeah.
So when you listen and you like really allow yourself that's not, I used to, when I started this journey, I used to think like, oh, I'm giving up. I'm not doing what I can be doing today. That's actually the complete opposite. You're doing what you need to be doing. You're resting in that moment. So what keeps me coming back is knowing that I'll be able to again, that it's not permanent, it's not forever. Again, I have one of those days I rest, and then I know I come back. It's also being really realistic. I'm one of those people that will come in twice a week, maybe 3 times.
Sure.
I'm not going to be the person that comes in every day, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And like allowing myself that grace of, you know what, it's your own journey, and you're doing what's good for you, and having a community that's so supportive of that too.
And I love that you said that, because for you, I feel like you're almost forced to like analyze your body, like how am I feeling today? That, and so it's because it's like you have a condition that is like, all right, I need to operate with what my body's giving me today. Yeah. But that's a conversation I have with people who don't have an autoimmune disorder. I'm like, a great example for me, and it was like yesterday's workout at the other gym in Sparta. JJ will tell you, it was a real like a bear. It was just like you look at it, you're like, this is gonna be real bad. Yeah. And it was like, yesterday was just one of those days. It was like, work has been stressful, didn't sleep great, was working out by myself without a class. And so it was like, I'm gonna work out, but I'm just not gonna go as fast or as hard, just so I can get a workout in, feel good, stay healthy, but then like I can come back the next day and give it all I got. And it sounds like that's kind of the messaging from you is. And so I do want that to project out to other people, that it's like, if Tania can do it, like it's the same message out to everyone else. So that's really cool.
But it's also just coming here. Like for me, just the act of, I'm a mom of 2 young kids too, below 5. And so being able to find time to come, and sometimes I have this thing with myself where I never look at the workout beforehand.
Nice.
Because I'm like, whatever it is, I'm going to tackle it when I get there. But I'm going to be honest with you. There are days I come in and I see one of those bear of a workouts and I'm like, oh, I'm going to need some modifiers, and then I tell the coach, and I do it very shamelessly and like with a lot of like self-forgiveness. Like, listen, you're going to modify and you're not going to RX this time. And that's fine. Yeah. And one day you will. And so I did. I remember that the first time I joined, and there was a challenge, and I was like my very first RX, and it was such a huge deal. But every day I come in with a mentality of it might not be today, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. The main message is you're here.
Yeah.
And so for that hour, you're here, you have that community, you're working. As a mom, like, this is your time for you, when, your energy, like, everything is split in a million different directions. It's nice to know that you have that support, you have that community, and you're here, and you're doing it.
That's so cool. So listen, what I would really like, you've been on quite a journey. If you could give, and this might be a hard question, if you could boil it down and give one piece of advice to someone who is kind of going through the same thing and looking to try to get their physicality back, right? The ability to do things. What would you say to that person?
I would say, like, as long as you have the desire, as long as there's a little flame in you that wants to achieve that goal, regardless of how long that's going to take. I mean, again, we're talking about 3+ years of being in a debilitated position. You can and you will. You have that support. You have that community, the people that will work with you, that'll give you nutrition plans, that'll modify as much as you absolutely need to, and people that'll cheer you on, complete strangers that know nothing. And I would say 95% of the women who come here don't know anything about my background.
Not
but
anymore.
It's so cool.
Not anymore, Tanya.
But it's so cool to still have that, that support. Like, you're going through it and they're just like, you've got this. Like, you're so strong. You can do this, and it doesn't matter your age, your ability, like what you can do with your body, what you're able to walk, what you're able to run. You're not able to run, that's okay. Like, we'll modify. Like, as long as there's that just tiny little slight of will, like, there are no barriers in your way. I mean, you have everything at your fingertips to help you achieve it.
I freaking love that. So listen, you're super busy. You got a job, you're a wife, you got 2 kids. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to be on. Guys, or ladies, I should say, you see Tanya at the gym, give her a shout out, give her a hug. She's crushing it. As always, guys, like and subscribe to us on YouTube and Instagram. Give us a 5-star rating on the podcast platform you listen on. See you at the gym.